This is Miss Humbert here, and today we're going to start our very first notes of Unit 5, which is Unit 5, Notes 1. So today we're going to talk about finding the vertex and the y-intercept. This is probably something you don't know what it is yet, so we're going to start by talking a little bit about that. So when you're graphing a quadratic equation, so that's what we're going to be doing for the first part of the unit. So first we need to know what a quadratic equation is. So that's ax squared plus bx plus c. So ax squared plus bx plus c. And the graph of a quadratic takes the shape of what's called a parabola. Okay, so it's called a parabola, and we're going to notice what a parabola looks like here in a second. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. So these two graphs represent a parabola. So let's take a look at some stuff. Okay, first you have a point that's called the vertex. I do want you guys to actually fill this out, write it down, because you'll need to know these points. Okay, so they have a point called the vertex. This is the point where you start graphing the parabola. It is the minimum or the maximum for the graph. So this point right here, notice how it's the bottom, is the vertex. If this would work, that would be great. This point right here is the vertex. And because it's on the bottom of the parabola, it's the lowest point, so this vertex is a minimum. Up here we have a vertex, and it's at the top, so this vertex is a maximum. Okay, so that vertex there is a maximum. So let's take a look at what else we need to know. Oh boy, I'm really struggling today. All right, so notice that they have symmetrical lines going down them. So these are the symmetrical lines. They cut the parabola in half. That symmetrical line is called the axis of symmetry. It runs through the vertex, and it's going to have the same value as the x-coordinate. So again, make sure you're filling in all of that information. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the steps to finding this information. So first thing you're going to do is write out your A, your B, and your C. Okay, so you're going to write out your A, your B, and your C. Then you're going to find the x-coordinate. That's using this formula. So you really want to make sure you have all these steps written down. You're going to plug the x-coordinate back in to the original equation. That's what's going to give you your y. Okay, then you're going to write out the vertex as a point xy. Remember that your axis of symmetry is going to be opposite of b over 2a because your axis of symmetry is the same as the x-coordinate. Okay, so that's all of your steps. Now let's take a look at how we would do this. We're just going to do 4 examples. So first we want to find our A, our B, and our C. Well, our A is always with the squared term, so that's 2. Our B is always with our x term, so that's 8. Our C is always our constant, so that's -3. Now, it might be in a little bit of a different order on your worksheet, so just kind of look at what letter it's at. So we're talking about the parabola, excuse me. So when your A is positive, if you're a positive person, if you're happy, it's going to open up. If your A is positive, it opens up. If your A is negative, it opens down. Now, to get the axis of symmetry, we want to use that equation opposite of B over 2A. So now we're going to plug that in. So we're going to do the opposite of B. Well, since it's positive 8, we're going to do -8 over 2a. So then we have -8. 2 times 2 is 4. -8 divided by 4 is -2. So your axis of symmetry is -2. That also means that the x-coordinate of your vertex is going to be -2. Well, now what I need to do is I need to take that x and I need to plug it in for each x up here. That's what's going to give me my y. So wherever I see an x in that original equation, I take the x out and I put a -2 in instead. Now whenever I put it in, I put it with parentheses surrounding it. Okay, so this right there is what we're going to plug into your calculator. So what I suggest doing is getting out a calculator and plugging this in along with me. Now what I have written here, if you were to plug it in your calculator exactly like I have it written, you will always get the right answer. So if you use the parentheses like I have written and you plug it into your calculator just like this, you'll get the right answer. So why don't you go ahead, get a calculator, try plugging this in. Okay, when you plug it in, you should get -11 as your answer. Now, your y-intercept is your c value. So your c value is -3. Okay, so your c value is -3, so that's also your y-intercept. Let's take a look at number 2, finding our a, our b, and our c value. So our a is with the squared term, that's -3. If I could write, that would help. That's -3. Our b is always with the x, that's -6, and our c is 4. Okay, so now we want to think, okay, my a is negative. Since my a is negative, it's going to open down. Now to get my axis of symmetry, again, I'm going to do opposite of b over 2a. So now I'm ready to actually calculate that out. So I'm going to do opposite of my b term, which is 6. Since it's already negative, I'm going to do the opposite and make it positive. Over 2 times a. So I have 6, and 2 times -3 is -6. 6 divided by -6 is a -1. So my axis of symmetry then is -1. That also means that the x-coordinate of my vertex is -1. So now I want to take the fact that x is equal to -1 in my vertex, and I want to put it in for each of these x's. So now I'm going to take the x out completely, and wherever I put in a -1, I'm going to put a parenthesis around it. So all this is plugging it into your calculator. So if you do it just like that, and you plug it into your calculator with all the parentheses, you should always get the right answer. So when you plug that into your calculator, this should be squared. When you plug it into your calculator, you end up with 7. So your vertex is -1, 7. Your y-intercept comes from your c value, which is 4. So that's your final answer for number 2. Next, let's take a look at numbers 3 and 4. So we're going to fill this out. Now, if there's no coefficient with any of the term, remember that coefficient is 1. So a is 1, b is 2, and c is 18. So because our a is positive, it's going to open up because we're a positive person. Okay, so when we calculate our axis of symmetry, remember we use opposite of b over 2a. So now we're going to do opposite of b over 2a. So that's going to become -2 divided by 2. You always want to simplify the bottom before you divide. -2 divided by 2 is -1. So your axis of symmetry is -1. And then the x-coordinate of your vertex is -1. Now we need to find the y-coordinate. So wherever I see an x, I'm going to plug in a -1. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take every x out and I'm going to plug in a -1 instead. So I have -1 squared plus 2 times -1 plus 18. Now again, you want to plug that exactly as it's written into your calculator using parentheses and everything. So you should be trying that on your own with me to make sure that you're doing it right. So then you end up with 17. So your vertex is at the point -1, 17. Last but not least, your y-intercept comes from the c value, which is 18. So that's your final answer for number 3, sorry. Let's take a look lastly at number 4. So for number 4, your a value is 2 because that's with the square term. Now I notice there's no term that has just an x. So that means that that term is 0. Okay, that doesn't mean that the b becomes 16. Okay, c is always the thing that's just a number. So now our b is going to be 0. So let's go ahead and think about this. So our a is positive, so that means it's going to open up. Okay, to get your axis of symmetry, you want to do opposite of b over 2a. A? Well, there's no opposite of 0, so that's just really going to be 0 divided by 4. 0 divided by anything is just 0. So my axis of symmetry is 0. That also means that the x-coordinate of my vertex is 0. So now, to get the y-coordinate of my vertex, I'm going to plug in 0 for x up here. So I'm going to take the x out completely and put parentheses 0 in instead. So 2 times 0 squared plus 16. Type that into your calculator and you end up with 16. So the vertex then is 0, 16. Last but not least, your y-intercept comes from the c value, which is 16. So your y-intercept is 16. So that concludes your note video today. Thanks for listening. Go ahead and grab a completed note sheet once you're done. Thanks, guys.